Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Find out on the 24th. If she took.
All right, we will move on to the approval of the agenda.
Motion to approve.
Mr. Chair, could I
Yeah,
maybe sneak in one item, introduction of new staff members, either at the beginning or the end, whatever your
right
pleasure
now,
is.
it's just fine with me.
Okay. Okay, I'd like to introduce our new feedlot officer, Brian Bartholomew.
Close. I get that one a lot. I'm Brian Berthium is my name. Yeah, I've been in the role for just over a month now. Yeah, I previously did a lot of work on mapping, and I went to college for geology. So I've got a lot to learn in the world of ag. It's been really fun to kind of delve into all sorts of topics in the last month here. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to keeping things going. And
Where did you do your studies?
I went on to State University.
Terrific.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, welcome.
Nice. Oh, well, thank you. It's nice to meet all of you.
Thank you.
Brian.
Thank you. All right, we have a motion to approve the agenda. I need a second. I believe.
Second.
All right, we have a motion by Kelsey, a second by Amy to approve the agenda. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Hearing none, the motion has passed. Approval of the minutes from January 16th.
Move approval.
I'll second that.
I have a motion from Ed to approve and a second from Lynn. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Hearing none, we will move on to petitions. Docket number BOA 041725-01.
Yeah, I guess I will kind of present the first one here, number one. This is in regards to a kind of a twofold request. Mainly when we processed this, we were more centered on the setback that a proposed structure would be from a state highway. But as we reviewed this, you'll notice a trend in this afternoon's petitions. All three are relating to a prime soil element. So, hopefully between the staff report and the presentation I have, that some of those questions along those lines are going to be answered. The bullet points show the sections of the ordinance. The first one is regarding a setback that is applied from a state road. And the second segment is from the prime soil requirement. And that's applied because the applicant, in this case, Mark Leonards, has indicated that the shed or the structure would actually be co-used as a dwelling of sorts. So that would apply in this situation. Look at the site overview. This is from a GIS snippet. It's a infamous T-shaped parcel because of the historics that's associated with that parcel. It's a remnant of a railroad that operated in that area in St. Charles. You can see there's parcel numbers to the north that start with a 29 that would indicate that those are within the city of St. Charles. The ones that start with 13 are still the St. Charles Township property. This is the applicant's site plan. They wish to construct a 100 by 60 multi-use structure that used for storage, for farm machinery, personal storage, and also an area designated as a living quarters. As mentioned in the staff report, the property that you see immediately to the right or to the east, it's indicative of the parcel number that ends, it's 13-000-1420. is a relative. I believe that is his son's property. So the intent is to almost use that in a shared manner where they'd be using the existing shared driveway, where there's an existing access, and then there's a well on that property. So they would tend to try to receive water service, and they would, if this is ultimately approved, they'd be seeking some type of sanitary provision that would serve the proposed new structure and use. Again, showing kind of more expanded view. The area that's north is actually Minnesota Road right-of-way for 14. A packet of information and a formal request was sent to MnDOT District 6 asking for feedback or comments as this relates to the road jurisdiction, which is MnDOT in this case. They indicated that they didn't have any comments at the time, but if they did, they would notify us and send us that. As of today, we have not received any additional feedback from MnDOT regarding this request. And when we overlay the prime soils, the type 1s, 2s, and 3s, this parcel is entirely encapsulated with prime soil overlay. Thus, it is in the agricultural district still, so that standard still needs to be addressed. So that's why it's referenced with this petition. Laid 2-foot contours on this map. The red lines are representing a 2-foot change in elevation, and the yellow are indicating essentially 10-foot changes in elevation. You can see that the way that this parcel is kind of oriented, there's somewhat a drainage pattern that would move runoff and material to the east. You'll kind of see that with the picture slides that I got coming up. Again, it is a historic parcel. This shows, it makes reference to the old railroad, which indicates a 50-foot segment from the center of the old bed of the railroad, and it flares out where the widest part is on the west. It actually would be additional 100 feet on both the north and south. So it's the main usable part of this parcel would approximately be 300 feet by 110, and that's where the applicant indicates where they'd like to put the structure in the most usable part of that parcel. Couple of pictures. This is looking to the west. The structure that you see is on the neighbors. I believe that's the Heim property. And as I kind of referenced in the staff report, that has a historical use of being commercial, industrial, and other types of use. In this case, it was, I think they have multiple uses there. There's an agricultural sales and service that sells seed corn and I think some fertilizer. And as you get further to the west, closer to the high school, we actually issued a beauty salon where they were performing hair service and whatnot. There's also been a history of variances. There was a variance granted for the structure that you see, and there was also variances granted to allow some of the signage throughout the years. And this was just briefly tracking all the way back through the 80s and 70s of this immediate neighborhood.
Eric, do you know what those variances were for?
Distance from the road from state, because the 130 feet has been a consistent setback that's been applied off of Highway 14. The left picture that you see is looking back to the east along Highway 14. And essentially where it's been mowed, you can see the change in the stubble height. I'm actually on the MnDOT right away with the vehicle that's parked there. The actual property that's been illustrated in this packet is actually following the longer vegetation. Picture on the right is showing one of the corners. It's been painted in red, and I'll kind of show where the other corners are that are attempting to represent the structure location. One straight on. And you can see as you get further to the south or deeper into that parcel, there's a definite change in elevation. It gets steeper with the grade, and that kind of corresponds with that LiDAR, that 2-foot elevation change. In the applicant's comments, they're citing the need for the variance to try to minimize the amount of land alteration, and it wouldn't even be as close as what the adjacent structures are to the road, and it would be smaller in size. And I think based on those points, that's why we didn't really receive any feedback from MnDOT. It's not asking for a closer encroachment or anything that would be outside the norm of that established area. One other set of pictures, again, the red, there's one that's right at the line of where the right-of-way is, and then there's one that would be the far, I believe the far southeast corner of the proposed structure right there at the base of that little brush thicket. Again, it's a proposed 100 by 60 shed with intended living quarters. They're asking for an 80-foot setback from Highway 14 instead of the required 130. The proposal would involve using an existing driveway in a shared capacity with a relative located to the east.
Eric, may I ask, if you go back to the driveway, I see the driveway continues off the screen, the lower screen. Is that a farm
Yes,
that uses equipment? Is
yes.
it be a turn lane on Highway 14 since traffic will increase in the range?
No, there would be no improvements to undergo a turn lane or a change to that. That would take a study and quite a bit of information through MnDOT to do that. I believe the farm that doesn't show up on this, but it's further to the south, is a poultry turkey operation. Was Hubbard at one time, and then it was Jerome Foods, and now it's probably Jenny-O, so it's changed ownerships throughout the years, but it is a poultry facility.
Thank you.
Yep. The applicants did approach St. Charles Township on February 18th, and they had their form acknowledged and completed, and they indicated no comments as to this request. Again, a packet was sent to MnDOT District 6. They acknowledged receipt of that, and they indicated should they have any formal comments that they would respond back. And then as of today, we've received nothing additional. In closing, I guess please refer to the staff report, the findings that staff has proposed, the findings of fact document that has been supplied by the county attorney's office, and staff has recommended 2 conditions of basic conditions. And with that, any other questions?
We had that green outline like a T shape
Mhm.
between the green and the highway. Is that all highway right of way then?
Yes, it is.
And then the driveway coming in, that's been there for a long, long time.
Yes,
So the only additional, she was concerned about traffic, sounds like, but it would just be the couple that's gonna live there. So probably one car,
correct.
once in a while too.
Yeah, it becomes more of a dynamic when a commercial business, if it was a conditional use permit where they're going to have employees and quite often on-site sales or service of some kind, and you expect a certain generation more in traffic, it could arise to that level, especially heavy equipment.
Is it just gonna be a shed for now? Cause it in all of the approval criteria, it doesn't, as far as I can see, say anything about the living quarters. It just says whole shed. And I thought I saw something somewhere about a mobile home. Is that in this one? I was trying to look back and find it, but then I was like, whole shed, are they gonna park it underneath? Like,
It's a pole shed that would be, I think, an inner area delineated as a house or living quarters. And you could ask the questions of the applicant just to get clarification on that. But yes, we've taken the approach that for permitting that it would have to be recognized as a dwelling in concurrently with up the pole sheds, so.
And then they would potentially, if it needed a variance, have to come back for the well and the septic if they put one in, or
No, it's understood that they
they're not gonna put a
Um,
septic in or anything?
they may put a septic tank or a holding tank that may be, again, used in conjunction with the neighboring property, or if they have enough room to work with, they could they could evaluate on-site service too for a septic system based on the
In order
low
to,
flow.
like, put it up and know that it's a potential living quarters, they don't have to have all that ready in this document at this time.
Correct, it's being recognized through this process. They'll have to clarify that if it's approved when they get to making those permits. But right now, based on the structure deficiency of meeting the setback, that was the main issue.
And where's their driveway to their shed gonna go from the road?
My understanding, they would come in and it would have to be contained on the parcel,
Mhm.
so they'd have to bring it in this manner here.
And that's like a more efficient way to do it than to flip it the other direction and put it closer to that driveway?
Yes, and I think putting in a new cut off of Highway 14, that would bring up a whole new review by MinDOT to put in a new access to serve that.
So they're not gonna put the living quarters in right away? That would be in the future that they'd put the living quarters in?
I know they're still weighing that, but they would want to design that structure to have a corner of it or a portion of that as living quarters,
And the rest of it would be used just for like,
cold storage.
okay.
Eric, has any of the property outlined in green in the recent past been used for agricultural purposes?
No, it hasn't, to my knowledge.
And the parcel to the west with the commercial tan pole building on it, is that built on prime soil also?
Yes, it would be.
Do we know if a variance was granted for that?
That predates our ordinance amendments that put that into effect.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any more questions for Eric? All right, thanks.
Yep.
If the petitioner's here, if you'd like to speak, you can come up to the microphone.
I guess,
Just state your name and address quick for the record.
my name is Mark Leonards, be Mark and Carol Leonards. We live over by Chatfield. So my son resides in that house at the end of the green there. So what we're proposing is, as we're getting close to retirement age, is to put a small living quarters in the end closest to the woods, be this towards the bottom there. So, and we're trying not to, we'll be coming off of the main road. We don't want to go out onto the highway up where the shed, is closer. And then, we'll be, that building that's already there is 66 feet from the center line. And we will be 80 feet, so we'll be 20 feet even beyond where that is at in reference. And then when we put a new septic field in at my son's house, we kind of oversized it. A bigger tank, a bigger drainage field and stuff in case that he wanted to put in a shed up with a bathroom or something in or add on to his house. So what we're thinking is maybe trying to use that septic field and drain field and get our water from there too. So that's kind of where we're at with that. If not, then we'll have to design our own septic. And with that 100 feet wide towards his place, there should be room down in there to put our own septic if that would be a case or, a problem. But we're thinking about just using this as, we're gonna retire, so we're probably gonna hopefully go down south for the winters, so we'll kind of be up here in the summertime with our grandchildren and spend some time with him. So that's kind of what we're looking at, kind of a retirement, storage, motorhome, couple old tractors, and that's about it.
So the motorhome would be stored in the shed.
Yeah.
You're not gonna use that as your living quarters while you're there.
No.
Okay,
No.
that's where I got confused.
No.
All right.
No living in the motorhome. No, we want to
Okay.
put a small living quarters in there just like 2-bedroom or something, just for my wife and I. So that's the plan. Any other questions for me?
Excuse me, Mike,
Mark?
Mark, if you are required to put a septic system in, does that fit on that larger rectangular area?
It won't fit up there. We would probably have to come closer to my son's house. Because the driveway would probably only be like 12 feet wide, where that in the narrower part, that's 100 feet wide. So there should be room in there for a septic field and tanks if need be. If not, maybe we would just put holding tanks in, because like I say, it'll just be the two of us, and we're not gonna be there a lot. So maybe just have that pumped as we needed it. But that's kind of the theory. There should be room. I've kind of talked to Huff Schulte that does septics and stuff that's from the area, and he didn't seem to have a problem with it. He said it might be a mound system, but yeah, there would be room.
So does the variance for the prime soils that you're looking for also include the driveway?
I guess
Doesn't it need a variance for the driveway on prime soils also?
I think it would apply to the whole
It would
parcel.
apply to the whole parcel?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's, my son bought that place from my uncle, and he bought the railroad back, his land is, like, I don't know, 800 feet something, but he's lived there since 1952, and there's never been any agricultural in that area where the other building is already there. Nothing has ever been agricultural. He actually remembers the railroad ties going through there. So it's never really been farmed or,
All right, I think that's it. Thank you.
okay, thank you.
I would be looking for a motion to open the meeting to the public.
I'll move that.
All right, do I have a second? All right, we have a motion by Lynn and a second by Ed to open the meeting to the public. All in favor, say aye.
I,
Aye. All opposed? Hearing none. Would anyone from the public like to speak for or against this petition? For the second time, would anyone like to speak for or against this petition? And for the third time, would anyone like to speak for or against this petition? All right, hearing none, I would entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
I move.
A second? Okay. We have a motion by Lynn, a second by Amy to close the public hearing. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None opposed. So is there any discussion on this?
It was like a decent, reasonable request.
I move
I have no
approval
problem.
subject to the findings of fact by the staff and the conditions of the staff. Move approval of the variance request.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, we have a motion by Ed and a second by Amy to approve the variance. All in favor, say aye.
I,
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None opposed. So that we'll move on to docket number BOA 04-17-2502. It's like Lou.
What page is it on? Okay, it is.
Good afternoon. Second petition of the afternoon is A variance to allow construction of a new dwelling on class 1 through 3 soils. It's a class 2 soils instead of class 4 through 8 soils within the Ag Resource Conservation District pursuant to chapter 10.4.76. Location of the petition and the property in question is roughly halfway between Minneska and Rolling Stone along Whitman Deering Drive. If you look at the map here, you can see Rolling Stone, the cluster to the south. Minneska is marked to the north and west. You have Minnesota City to the north, to the south and east of the property, with the Mississippi River and John Latch State Park abutting the property to the north. The parcel that's outlined where they're looking to build on is 516 acres in size. And they own a total of 1,354 acres in Rolling Stone Township. Okay, looking a little bit closer at the property, you can see parcel 2610 is the 500-acre parcel, and the proposed building site would be in the southwest corner. You can see an ag field down in that corner, and they would be building there. The total ownership of all of the acreage is spread between 3 different ownership entities. The first and largest is in the yellow numbers there, and that is owned by Thomas and Marie Tiber Trust. There are a couple of parcels in red to the southeast that are owned by Rustic Riverland Ridge, which has been in L. Tiber. There's one parcel owned by Lincoln and Andrea Tiber, and then another one just outright by Ben and L. Tiber. So you can see there's, I guess, 4 different entities, but all farming together as a family. And Ben and L are the applicants, and Tom and Marie have signed the application form as the petitioners and property owners. Zooming in a little further to the property, we see the proposed site plan and the layout of soils on the property. This is bluff top property, so things generally slope away and from the road and from the agricultural fields on top. I see the class 2 soils and then class 3 soils along the edges as things get steeper, and we'll have another mapping exhibit showing slopes as well, so you get a sense of that. The proposed dwelling would be 56 feet by 42 feet with an attached garage, 30 by 28 feet. We did look at the entire parcel, the entire 516 acres, because the soil standard has an exemption if the entire parcel makes up less than 40%. The percentage is actually 53%. So since they were over that, they did need to meet the soil standard. And since they were building on a class 2 soil, a variance is required.
Could you run that by me one more time?
Sure. Just letting you know that there is an exemption within the soil standard, where if the entire parcel makes up less than 40% of class 1 through 3 soils, you're exempt, and then you could build a home on those class 1 through 3 soils without the need of a variance. You'd meet the standard. You'd be exempt from those soils. But in this case, since the percentage was over 40%, we're at 53%, the standard applies, and that's why we're here with you today. Yep.
I ask for one more piece of clarification.
Sure.
The plot you're referring to, that is 53%, is where the proposed driveway and dwelling outline is enclosed by Whitman Drive.
Nope, it's the entire 516 acres.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we'll look at the entire parcel.
Okay.
So you look at the entire parcel and look at the percentage of that entire parcel that is in prime soils.
Correct. Yep. That is right. And the soil type is the seed and salt loam, a common soil type, and good for production of agricultural products and crops. Slope map. These are 2-foot contours overlaying the site. As they get tighter, that's a steeper slope. As they spread out, those are flatter slopes. At the building site, you can see the lines getting a little bit more drawn out and wider, so it's indicating that it's a little bit flatter up on top. And then the slope is falling away to the south. And then if you go far enough north, it falls away on that side as well towards John Latch State Park. So they're up on top of the bluff on a flatter segment, and the proposed building site is roughly 3 to 6% slope at that location. And this is just another showing the soils and the slope, the relationship there. A lot of times they can correlate a bit where the soils are changing as the slopes are getting steeper, as you can see here. There's a few overview items to be aware of. Ag Resource Conservation Zoning District, Whitman-Deering Drive is considered a local township road. And so that would carry a 65-foot setback from the center line. Driveway is approximately 400 feet long. And so the standards in Section 9.72 of the Winona County zoning ordinance would apply, and those indicate that a turnaround at the end would have to be constructed. Since it's over, I believe it's 300 feet in length, then you have to provide a space for turnaround if for some reason emergency services or other services are trying to access the property. Some photos to get an idea of the lay of the land. The first one here on the left from the site visit is looking to the west on Whitman-Deering Drive. You can see the existing Tiber Farmstead on the right. View looking east from the same location. The proposed building site would be in the field to the right on that photo. And as you're looking, you can't quite see. There's some trees kind of to the right of the power pole and the sign. Those are the second Tiber farmstead. There are 2 on the entire parcel, and their agricultural activities are split between the 2. So a big consideration for them in choosing this location was choosing a spot that was kind of between the 2 for access and convenience for tending to their dairy operation and their beef cattle operation. This is one from the same location as the other 2, just looking straight out in the field towards the proposed building site. Rolling Stone Township has considered the petition and offered support, and a signed township acknowledgement form is in your packet. Recommendation and findings are written in support of the petition, and we have included 2 conditions for your consideration as well. As always, need to remember to consider all materials in making your decision, not just the ones here. And the petitioners are also here, so they can offer any comments and answer questions as well. That's all I have. You have any questions for me?
Lou, from a planning standpoint and zoning standpoint, does it make any difference to you and your staff whether you're building on a class 2 or a class 3 soil, or is one the same as another?
Well, I mean, as far as the ordinance is written, they're grouped the same. we would look at them the same. Obviously, one is a little bit better. Actually, class 1 and 2 soils are considered prime soils. Class 3 soils are soils of statewide importance, I believe they're classified as. So they're still a highly productive soil, but they're not they're not as highly productive as the class 1 and 2. But yeah, the ordinance looks at them the same, and they are all joined in as class 1 through 3 is what the standard applies to.
And I'm looking at the exhibit on page 53 of the board's material. You had it up there at 110. It shows the aerial view with the existing improvements, apparently predominantly on class 3 soils.
Mm-hmm.
And the proposed dwelling under consideration now will be on class 2 soils. It would appear, and I need your clarification, that it would be challenging or impossible to put the proposed dwelling unit on class 3 soils.
It would certainly be steeper slopes and more challenging. Yeah, probably higher costs associated with that. Yeah, as you can see here, the slopes increase as you get into those class 3 soil types. We also went over a number of different sites with the applicants. Some are off on the other portion of the property, and looked at some areas where they could actually meet the soil standard. And those are areas similar to the one here, where it's near a pond or a drainage way, and slopes are higher. And it wasn't something that they thought was a good idea. And so just so we do look at different sites, based on what works for them and their family and their farming operations, as well as the zoning ordinance, and they weigh all those, and ultimately this is the site that they chose.
And roughly how much class 2 land is being taken out of production with this dwelling unit and driveway, roughly?
I haven't calculated exactly, but it would kind of depend on, on how they, maybe they'd have a good idea. If they leave all of it in production up to the driveway, and then don't take out that much for like yard or lawn space. But if they're, maybe they have plans for future agricultural structures or, something like that could take out some from production, but obviously then they'd be using it for other types of agricultural uses. But those aren't part of their plan at this time, so.
So I need some clarification. Is that something that we should be addressing to minimize the amount of land being taken out of production? Or is that something from a planning perspective you don't care about?
I think every situation is different.
What about this one?
This one being that it's a farming family, it's their fields that they make their living off of, and their home is an extension, honestly, of their agricultural operations. I would personally give them a little bit more leeway on that, but that's not part of the zoning ordinance. It could be something that you look at your criteria and your overall assessment within the evaluation. But yeah, you could look at it that way. I think it'd be a little bit different if it was somebody who wasn't farming the land and they were, taking out, 10 acres, for some other use.
And then again, I apologize if this is covered in the materials. Assuming the request were to be granted, how much of the area then is potentially able to be taken out of production? I don't see like a site plan of how much is going to be subject to a variance.
Yeah, so the variance is really just the building site. So the footprint of the home is what we look at. So if the footprint of the home was located off of class 1 through 3 soils, we wouldn't be here today. Driveway, we don't calculate that in, so potentially you could meet the standard and still be taking out, prime soils in order to get to your building site that was located off of the prime soils. That's the way we've been applying the ordinance since it was adopted. So yeah, to us, it doesn't matter so much as to how much, but, whether it's located on those soils or not.
So in theory, if the variance is granted, it's granted as to the red rectangle we're looking at, correct?
The footprint of the home, yep.
And then in theory only, the cropland would come right up to that red square, in theory.
Well, I mean, I would just say that we don't expect that to happen, and it's not part of the standard, but we would expect any home that gets approved to take out more cropland than what is just the footprint of the home. Yeah.
And I guess that's where I'm at a loss here.
Mhm.
Is this all a subjective application done on a case-by-case basis? Or are there standards within the zoning ordinance that, for example, recite how much of the prime soil land adjacent to the dwelling unit can be used, for example, for a yard or a
Nope.
barn?
No, it doesn't get into that level of detail or specificity. So
In theory, they could put up how many outbuildings?
put it this way, they could, without a dwelling, they could convert all that land to something other than agricultural use, and there would be no, there's no standard in the zoning ordinance that would prevent them from doing so. They could convert that to prairie or, a lawn, or, they could put a personal soccer field out there. That wouldn't really, none of that would trigger any pieces of the zoning ordinance. But since it's a home, it's for permanent development of that location, we look at it as a permanent improvement that we're permitting anyways, the standard applies. It doesn't apply to any other thing, anything else in the zoning ordinance other than new dwellings.
Okay.
Yep. So it's only subject to the criteria to approve the variance. So the variance approval criteria, like any other variance.
Yes.
So how come they didn't want to put it closer to the road? How come 400-foot driveway?
That would be a good question for them. I don't know. Wasn't in their application materials. Go ahead, Lynn.
I'm a little confused when you're naming all the different parcels,
Mhm.
which sounds like it's all the same family, but different people owning the parcels.
Right.
Now, is this dwelling sitting on 4 different parcels, or is it in just one of the parcels?
This is the one parcel, the 516 acre parcel. So if you look at this map, the thick yellow lines are parcel lines. You can see this parcel extends up north of the road and to the west, or I'm sorry, to the east of the road. There's a smaller parcel on the bottom right of the map. That's Ben's folks live there on that smaller parcel, and there's also some farm activities there. But the 514 acres encompasses everything on the screen, essentially to the north and east and around that parcel.
So the house itself will be within one parcel,
Within
and then,
one 516 acre parcel.
okay, and
Yeah.
then all the other parcels just make up the whole 1,000+
Right.
acre farm?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, there's multiple parcels that make up the entire land holding.
Okay.
And we haven't before seen kind of arbitrary parcel lines drawn to avoid this specific variance, correct?
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking at, in some cases, especially if the bank's involved, you need a financing through the bank and they're requiring a like parcel. So they're looking for something that's more like 5 acres or 10 acres in size. Or if you're splitting a property anyways, it might, in some cases, people have gone to, extraordinary lengths to, to wind a parcel around or, keep the standard in mind in order to meet the exemption. But in this case, I don't think it was going to help them much in this location anyways because of the layout of the soils and how how that parcel is laid out. So they weren't planning on splitting anything they have with their land. They weren't looking at creating a new parcel, and so that wasn't really a consideration. But yeah, on other sites, we've seen that from time to time, some somewhat funky parcels created in order to like meet the standard, and avoid the variance.
Yeah. Any other questions for Lou? All right, thanks, Lou.
Thank you.
Would the petitioner like to address the board? Just say your name and address for us.
Ben Tiber, address 21880 Whitman Deering Drive, Minnesota State, Minnesota. So back to the beginning of what Lou says. So you look at all the parcels. So my parents have the trust. Me and Ellie have our property. My brother has property. All separate entities. Don't combine them all together. We work together on the farm, but we're all separate, so you can't group them all together. Back to the 516. We talked about the 40% rule of under that did need no variance. The part you guys are missing is you look at that 516 acres and say, oh, wow, there's prime soil, but look where the prime soil is. It's on woodland. And that number is getting used in the woodland, and Ed, in your life, my life, and my son's life, it'll never get converted into farmland. So he's saying we're taking away highly productive soil. That number doesn't mean a whole lot, and I think the county has to relook at that and maybe change these rules of how we take those, because we shouldn't be looking at a variance right now, because you look at what's there for woods and what's there for farmland, we shouldn't be meeting that criteria of over 40%. And then back to the pictures here, you'll see my parents have a farm here, our dairy farm is over here on the left. The reason we picked the middle is because we're out of the feedlot restrictions. And that's why we picked that. We just didn't pick it out of the blue. So it's 1,200, 1,500 feet from each site. So we have a feedlot there, we have a feedlot to the left. In the middle, we're out of the feedlot clause.
Could you point to us where those feedlots are, please?
So you can't see this one here because it's right up here. But right here's the feedlot here, and this is the feedlot here. Now, obviously, this is on a 6-acre piece. That doesn't mean nothing. It's when my parents bought the farm. The bank wanted to have the house separate so they couldn't lose the house, and it all makes sense. As they changed it over the years, no, just left it alone. Okay, so yes, this is the feedlot here, and that's the feedlot over there. Where this site is here is out of the feedlot area. And obviously, we picked this site is because we have the gravel road here. Now, right here, that's where minimum maintenance starts. So we go back here at all. Now the township's gonna have to start turning that into township road. So that's why we stopped that right there. And if you ask why we picked out 400 feet, well, obviously you live on a gravel road. You want to eat dust in your house all the time. That's why you set off the road, because everything comes from the west, and that's why we pulled it back a little bit. Now, how many acres we're going to take away from the farm? I think the builder who was with us last night, we're figuring between 2 to 3 acres.
Thank you.
Now, when you were asked if we're going to farm right around this house here, no, because remember, we need a drain field, we need a septic. So then septic lines are running 100 feet out. We won't be farming over the top of them. We're going to crush them. So it looks like the septic is going to go this way here to the west, he's saying. And actually, we're actually thinking about, after we looked a little closer, the house might get moved over a little bit more this way to the left, just for the angle and everything to flow. Now, you're going to ask, well, how are we going to get water to the house? Well, the reason we picked this site also is because at our dairy farm here, we're going to run a water line over to the house. So we'll have one less cost of having a well drilled. So we'll have to have, and then with the power line is right here and it goes this way. We picked here because we're closest to the power, because the power don't come this way here. So the driveway would go like this, because obviously in the wintertime, if it fills full of snow, it's kind of like a decline right here. So we wouldn't want to come in the driveway that way. So we come in, and then there'd be no culvert needed because it's 0 grade off the road. And so basically the driveway would be kind of like this and it might swoop a little bit and then the house would be like this.
Is your goal to minimize the amount of land that is taken out of agricultural production?
Well, as a farmer, absolutely, right? Yep.
That was a
Yeah,
get-
that thing you making me no money, make you even a lawn.
that was a softball question.
Yeah, darn right it is, yep. So otherwise, other than that, I mean, that's kind of where we stand for our variance, you know. So yes, could we go to the road closer? I guess if you were out there to see it yourself, you would say, well, we're kind of right at the edge where it starts tipping off this way here, and we're kind of on a nice plateau. And, you know, and we're off the road enough that, you know, and for safety with the kids and that too, the farther away from the road. I mean, 400 feet, when you get out there, 400 feet really isn't that far.
I was just curious because some of the flatter land looks closer to the road. That's
Yep.
why I was
Yep.
curious, because then that's less production taken out. But,
Right, right.
Yeah.
Yep, so as Lou was saying, you know, the lines get bigger, so basically, you know, we're, you know, from here on out, everything kind of plateaus down. So, and then we're just gonna work the fields around it, you know, and fill in the dots, you know, as we can for farming it again.
Excuse me, there's I don't know, right under soil, there's a dark spot.
Here,
What is
that's
that?
a pond,
Is that a natural pond or a built pond?
built pond.
Built pond.
Yep,
So it's a retention pond because of the steepness.
there you go. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, so as you can see here, there's ravines coming through here.
Mhm.
And then actually this green here is actually a permanent grass field that we just leave as grass all the time for just erosion to catch that. So I guess if you were in my shoes and you were out at the site, you'd probably pick the same spot. Because just like you say, you always want to have your house on the high side, you know, and everything draining off it. And it's less money, you know, spent to do it that way too, so.
Thanks.
Any other questions? All right, I would entertain a motion to open the meeting to the public.
Make the motion.
I'll second it.
We have a motion by Amy, a second by Lynn to open the meeting to the public. All in favor, say aye.
Hi.
Opposed? None opposed. The meeting is open to the public. Would anyone like to speak for or against this petition? For the second time, would anyone like to speak for or against this petition? For the third and final time, would anyone like to speak for or against this petition? Anyone like to make a motion to close the public hearing?
I so move.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion by Lynn and a second by Ed to close the public hearing. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? None opposed. The meeting is closed to the public. Do you have any thoughts on this petition?
I mean, it makes a little more sense when they explained there's feedlots on either side, because that wasn't stipulated. And I feel like that was an important thing to leave out. Yeah. Did you?
I just wanted to alert you to one little housekeeping technicality on this one. Just before the meeting, found out that the payment has not been processed yet on this, so they haven't, technically, they don't have a completed application until that is done. That didn't seem like a good use of it. Pulling this item didn't seem like a good use of anyone's time. So you have the option of, well, you could table it until that is processed, or I would say that you could add a condition that either, well, tell it that it will not be recorded until it's paid, or no work will start until it's paid.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Have you talked to Ann at all? She said it didn't come through yet? Yesterday she emailed me and says thank you, so I thought it came through. That's not, oh, are you Ann yourself? Okay, it didn't come through yet, okay. And then to speak on that,
Yeah, you could just come back up to the mic.
so on the check issue there, the reason is because, so my banking that I used to write the check out with, I called her, I said, go ahead, use that check. So I used the check, sent it, and then she called me back and said it didn't go through. Well, obviously, if the bank has changed names and ownership, so them checks are no good no more. So then the bank themselves sent on last Friday, They sent Ann a check and I emailed you about that. And it should be here, it should have been already here ready. But anyways, they said they're gonna take, they had to order me new checks and they sent the check directly to the county for that amount, for their screw up. So if there's any fees or else, that's on theirs, that's their problem, so.
Okay,
Thanks
thanks.
for that clarification.
Anything else?
Well, I think it's well thought through. I mean, taking into condition the dust and the snow and the feedlots and grade and,
I plow that road, so I can attest to him, on that road to the east there. It drifts pretty bad sometimes.
I mean, I know speaking as a farmer myself, my husband and I farm, but you don't take productive land out of production unless you have a really good reason.
Yeah.
And you would put your house in such a way that, you need to consider your family safety and all the other things he mentioned, but also it is your livelihood. So you're not gonna, take any more land out than you really need to. So, I mean, as soon as the check arrives, that's all clear, I'd say go for it.
We like to amend the conditions right now.
Could I ask a technical question, Jordan? Thank you. Would this be the time to address concerns in the approval criteria?
Yeah, this would be the time for that.
Okay, on approval criteria, number 6, the economic considerations. Okay, give everybody a chance to get to page 6. This analysis, and it's underlined, says economic considerations have not been mentioned as the focus or featured consideration requesting the variance. When I go through these, page 6, under approval.
Yeah.
When I go through these, there are 10 sentences where it mentions business. Business this, business that. To me, those are a business is an economic consideration. As an English teacher, I think perhaps it's a matter of wording. Because when I look at the other considerations, for a family dwelling, so on and so forth, those are fine. But when you start using 10 times the adjective business or the noun business to describe this, I think we're getting on a rather questionable situation. It crosses a line between the economic considerations to keep saying business this and business that.
Well, I think that's why it's key that it says alone in here, so that
Where does it say alone?
economic considerations alone do not constitute practical difficulties. So,
Right, in the actual statement.
yeah, and so they're free to mention economic considerations as part of the reason that they're seeking a variance, but what I think this is trying to get at is that they don't just want this variance so that they can parcel this off and sell it.
Well, we don't know
You what I
that,
mean?
do we?
Well, it hasn't been stated in their application, and that's
No,
what this is
but-
considering, so.
You understand where the language means something. And I thought, well, I understand some of the uses of the word business. But when you start saying business interests, agricultural business, business is conducted, do their business, I could go through those. I think there are better ways to describe that than to use that word, which is associated with economic conditions.
So
And
you're
I
not-
would just mention that to the planning commission, that's an easy fix.
Okay, so you're not suggesting that economic considerations are the only reason for this variance, you're just suggesting a change in
Well,
language?
I don't know that, given that they mentioned business 10 times. That's what raises my concern, Jordan. Mr. Potter, Jordan. Okay.
Steve?
From the standpoint of whether you would approve or deny the application based on that criteria, what you say in the findings of fact is more important than what you say, what the staff says in the report. So you could agree or disagree with what's in the report. That's just a recommendation, and that's what the staff has found. And it's perfectly fine to ask staff about that, to clarify if you have questions, and ask the property owner if there's concerns about any of the criteria. And then that's not to dismiss your point that there's a lot of emphasis on business there, but some of it is just informing the board of the situation so that you can make a decision.
That's an excellent explanation. Thank you. Is there a better way to phrase that so that that doesn't appear to be connected to number 6, the economic considerations loan?
So we would have to take a look at I would have to take a look at the report a little more closely to see, but we could certainly, staff could certainly take a look at that moving forward about what language is used to support their recommendation. The findings don't just include the staff report, but also include the discussion that you're having here. So even if you said economic considerations are the only factor, you could look at the facts and arrive at a different conclusion. But I think the recommendation of the staff did not indicate that criteria was not being met.
Well, the English teacher in me could continue this discussion, but I understand where you're coming from. If I could move on, then thank you for that explanation.
Oh,
I really
thanks, Steve.
appreciate that. And pardon me for being a retired English teacher. I guess I don't have students to go over anymore. And in that same section, and there is another reference to that, in number 6, it says to establish a new dwelling that will allow the next generation to continue farming. And also then under number 1, so they can continue to live and farm on their land. That looks predictive to me. Also in number 6 on page 2, economic considerations loan under the findings of fact this time. Economic considerations alone do not constitute practical difficulties. Again, to allow the next generation to continue farming, that seems very predictive to me. None of us can predict the future. Is that phrase necessary to be in there? I mean, it's anticipating something that may or may not happen.
I think that Ben is the next generation from what I'm getting from it. He's working with his parents on this farm. And so I'm assuming he's the next generation that's going to take it over when his parents are done. And so being closer to their
But
site.
we can't predict
No, we can't, but
that.
he's
that will
already
happen.
working with them.
I just
on
don't
these
think
two
it's
farms.
necessary. I think I understand. I'm not saying you're not going to do it. I can see that you're a working person and you're doing it already. So that's not what I'm
Okay.
saying.
So you're just saying like the way they worded it is confusing.
I think it's a slippery slope
Okay.
and I don't think it's necessary.
I'll address that one if it's okay, since I wrote the findings of fact. What I would say about that is there's aspects to farming that are cultural and economic and things that make it help preserve it and things that don't help preserve it. So one of the goals of the comprehensive plan is to support agriculture and the continuation of agriculture. And the finding is basically that this configuration will improve the chances that they will be able to, that property will be maintained as an agricultural parcel overall. Rather than having, say, the next generation move somewhere else or go into something else, it would be easier for them to stay where they are.
But you're not saying that. You're saying that it will allow the next generation to continue farming. that may or may not happen. It's probably going to happen, but I think it's a slippery slope. And I think it's also a situation that we should look a little more closely at using that phrasing. I don't think it's necessary. If it happens, that's great, because under the variance, they're going to be allowed to do that.
So as I read Steve's number 6
On page,
on page 2 or B, Board of Adjustment, page 51. Steve, just for clarification, what you have in bold is a statutory provision, correct?
Yeah.
And then what you have underneath is what you perceive to be the case or the facts based on the application materials you looked at, correct?
Correct.
So as I read this, is you've taken the statutory provision and your knowledge of what that means, and then taken the application and the representations in the application, put that together in number 6 to essentially state that the statutory requirement recited in 6 has been met, correct? And you're not predicting who, if anyone, is actually going to take over the farm. What you are stating is that based on the written record, it's been represented that this is what's going to happen.
That's,
And we, as Amy has said, we can't control the future. We can base our decision on what we've been told and what is in writing. And that's what you're providing in the findings.
yeah, and that's correct. And often the findings are very close to the staff recommendations. And I'm mostly reviewing them to make sure that they're worded in a way that will hold up if it were challenged and are consistent with what the record actually shows.
Yes.
So that's why that language changes. It is just for the meeting, making sure we clearly meet that legal standard.
But just to highlight Amy's concern and her questions, if this ordinance is adopted and the variance is approved, what you have in the italicized language under each of the statutory bold provisions is included in the findings of fact, correct?
Correct. Those are the findings of fact, the written findings of fact.
Yep, thank you.
how difficult is it? I think you understand the history of some language
Mhm.
for this county.
Mhm.
And the slippery slope that can result in. And that language is a slippery slope.
Well, I'll point out that you're welcome to amend the findings of fact as you see fit, with a motion and a second and approval of the majority.
Okay,
And yeah, I would say these are recommended finding of facts or findings of facts that you can use if you choose, but you make the findings of fact, and we could change these in any meeting when you want to find differently.
okay. So in the recommendations, I can ask that to be changed,
Right,
recommend that be changed.
right, yeah, and I assume, deferring to the chair, that would be in the form of a motion that the board would vote on.
Okay, thank you for that clarification and taking all of your time.
No problem.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jordan.
Yeah.
I got some, Jordan.
Yeah, you can come up.
So, and just phrase of your slippery slopes, you got to think about a person, if they're going to put a house out in the country, 9 times out of 10, if you're going to put a house between 2 farms that are currently in production, I don't think most people that would want to be close to that smell and the activity. If you're going to go out to the country, you want a house that's far out of the way from everybody, and you have your own isolation, and you're not into the day-to-day activity that's going on. So I guess, sometimes when you look at the pictures, everything's kind of there for a reason right? It's not because, so obviously this house is gonna go there because the future is gonna keep going on, unless, our economy doesn't let that happen. Because as you look at the number of farms, they deplete every day, and the new ones coming in is not there. So all you see is farms getting bigger and less farms. So as a county, I think anything you guys can do to help promote, them farms, and the next generation be grateful. Because, as the revenue to the whole Winona County itself, them numbers are quite huge. And you start looking at all the makers, the only way we can pay that property tax is being profitable. And if that ain't there, she's all bye-bye, and then you can put up with all these yahoos from different states and countries and Bill Gates and everything else like that. And then they'll be telling the county what they want done on their level. So, thank you.
All right, anything else, or otherwise I would entertain a motion here.
Yeah, on that subject, farm I live on has been in my husband's family since 1866. So farmers become tied to the land. It's almost like family to them. And if you don't have a farm, you don't understand that. I assume your family's been on that farm for at least a couple generations, if not more. And to be able to pass that farm on to the next generation, sometimes you need to put investment in, like a house that the future generations are going to live in. I think you're going to live in it now, but possibly one of your kids will move into that house someday. So you want to make it possible and affordable for the younger generation to be able to step into the shoes of the generation that's retiring. So I don't think that that's unnecessary language. I think that's important language to have in there, that, it's making it possible for future generations. And the whole, kind of a, myself. But I think in this case, it is a pertinent issue that you make it so that future generations are able to. Otherwise, like you said, huge, farm, corporations and, coming in and taking over the land. And we don't want that. We want that.
And I understand that, and living in the country and having had the desire to see our son be able to take over our farm. I understand that feeling quite strongly, and that's not where I'm coming from. I'm not saying that this isn't a legitimate request. I'm just saying the language isn't useful to get the variance. I don't see the necessity. We're not saying unless you're going to promise us that the next generation is going to take over this farm and do what you just explained with this house, you can't have this variance. Of course not. That would be totally inappropriate. I'm just saying that this language is unnecessary to this variance. They will certainly be allowed to have family after family come into the farm, and that's a good thing, to have local people rather than, as Ben said, someone from who knows where and whose interest doesn't lie in the assistance to the community and the caring for the community. That's absolutely true. But I'm saying this phrase is unnecessary to all of that.
So let me just follow up on what Steve would probably say, and you can chime in. There, fortunately or unfortunately, the state statute requires number 6 to be in there. We don't have a choice.
No.
We either say it's been satisfied or it's not satisfied. I understand full well what you're suggesting. Our hands are sort of tied on this one. We have to make a finding on number 6.
And have a recommendation.
Can anyone hear me?
Yes.
Hi, I'm Ben's wife. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to speak or not. This is Ellie,
You're
Ben's
not
wife.
now, unfortunately.
Okay.
Thank you.
I just wanted to say, first off, this discussion is good. Having this discussion just makes the ultimate findings more supportable if they were ever challenged. Second, the Commissioner or Board Member Walsh is correct that you do have to make the finding. It doesn't have to be in the language that's there. What I try to look for when drafting this one, very often it will be that the economic considerations were just never came up as an issue, never appeared to be a concern or an issue. And so that's what it'll stay. I think the finding is stronger if you're able to put some reason for why the change is requested in that finding, so that it wasn't that it was just ignored. It was that there was a different reason than economic considerations. But the standard is solely economic considerations. So there can be economic considerations, and you could still find that standard is met.
Dan, thank you.
All right. Any further discussion or a motion on this petition?
I make a motion to approve the variance requested, consistent with and subject to the findings of fact as recited in the staff report, and that the ordinance not become effective until the application fee has been paid and cleared.
So would you just like to add a third condition for that then?
Thank you.
Okay. And do we have a second on that?
Is this the time, excuse me for not understanding completely, but would this be the time to make the recommendation that the language be amended?
Well, you could make an alternate motion or a friendly amendment if
I'd
Ed
be
would
happy to
accept
have
it.
her suggest anything you want.
Okay, I would just like to make the motion that language, I understand the business, use of the business language, thank you. But I would like to make a motion that we strike allow the next generation to continue farming. I don't think.
So we're on
But you're not saying
Page
it's not
51 of the
supported,
packet.
you just want different
51.
language. Okay.
Number 6, the first sentence.
You just wanted to
I
say
think the
that
language
there's
in the
no,
rest of it is perfectly clear
um,
that it's a fine variance.
did you just wanted to say that,
Number 6 on page 2.
how do you want to word it? You just wanted to say economic considerations have not been mentioned?
You want to
The
The
delete the
primary,
first
are you
sentence?
on page 2?
Six.
yeah, we
Yeah.
want to be on
6.
Yeah.
The primary reason stated for building is to allow a family member to establish a new dwelling. Economic conditions have not been mentioned as the
Okay.
focus or feature.
So
I
you
think
just
that's
want
Clear.
in a location that will allow the next generation to continue farming to just be taken out.
Correct. Thank you, Kelsey.
Steve?
Just a procedural thing. So you have a motion on the floor, and then hers would be a motion to amend his motion. And first you'd vote on hers, and then you would vote on his.
Is that how you take it, Ed?
Yes, that's fine.
Okay.
So I need one more clarification. What are we lining out in number 6? What language?
The first sentence is fine. The primary reason for the first line, where it ends, establish a new dwelling. And then just strike in a location that will allow the next generation to continue farming. It's fine. After that, economic considerations have not been mentioned as the focus or featured consideration. I understand it has to be in requesting the variance.
So we're just deleting the phrase, quote,
In a
in a
location.
location that will allow the next generation to continue farming.
Right. I mean, that's going to happen anyway. We have no control over that.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to amend the findings of fact as they relate to Ed's original motion. All in favor of the amendment, say aye.
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 Against, say nay.
Nay.
Nay. That was myself and Lynn were nay, and the rest were ayes. All right, so that motion passes. So we need a second on Ed's original motion to approve with the now amended findings of fact.
And that includes the payment, correct?
Yes,
Oh,
with the
just trying to figure
additional
out how much we're doing
condition.
here. Okay,
Yeah.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Ed and a second by Kelsey to approve the petition with the amended findings of fact and the additional third condition. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, the motion passed and the variance is granted. We will move on to petition number BOA 04-17-2503. Olivia.
Good afternoon. So we are par for the course on prime soils today. The petitioner's request is to allow construction of a new dwelling on prime instead of non-prime soils within the ARC zoning district, subject to the same Winona County zoning ordinance section 10476. So this site is up on Apple Blossom Drive in Dresbach Township. It's two parcels that are proposed to be combined into one. They are both parcels of record, and they'd be about 11.69 acres once combined.
Oh, yeah, thank you.
So a little bit of the project review. This has been going on since 2017. They did receive a conditional use permit for one of the parcels to build a new dwelling. That was because of the proximity to the top of the bluff in the Mississippi River Bluffs, as well as steep slopes. The petitioners came forward and submitted their zoning permit and septic permits this year, and we're proposing a change of location and combining the parcels. So when those two parcels were combined, it would trigger the prime soil standard of the zoning ordinance. Like I said before, the parcel size is about 11.5 acres once combined. And the reason for the change in location is because it's going to be on less steep slopes. So they're indicating that there would be less disturbance to the land overall with the new area. So on the left here, this is the 2017 conditional use permit location. You can see the square 100 by 100 off of to the north of the trees drawn. And then on the right, this is their current request for the location. So the dotted line shows the current property boundary, and then the home would be kind of situated over the top. And there are some additional maps here coming up. So on the left here, this shows the prime soils. It's the tan outline. I have it outlined around the area in red. You'll notice that both the 2017 and 2025 locations for the new home were on prime soils. So it wasn't as if one was non-prime and one was prime. In 2017, when they came forward with their proposal, that parcel on the left met the exemption requirements. So it was less than 40% of the total parcel. Now that they're combining it, it's going to be about 49%. So they would not meet that exemption, triggering them coming to the Board of Adjustment here today. You'll notice too, it's class 2 and 3 prime soils. And then on the right there, there's the contour map. It shows the 2025 location as being on a less steep slope overall compared to the 2017 location. Some of the other considerations for the project, like I mentioned, it is ARC zoning. Both of them are parcels of record, so they didn't need to meet the 40-acre minimum, and that would have been considered in 2017 with the conditional use permit. There was an archaeology survey conducted because it is a high arc area. That happened about 2 weeks ago with Mississippi Valley, and there were no resources identified on the site. They did look at both locations, kind of a larger area rather than just the 2025 proposed dwelling footprint. And then they did submit an erosion control plan from their contractor as well, showing what would be implemented with construction. So these are some site overview photos. On the bottom there, you can kind of see an aerial map showing where I was standing when I was taking the photos. I do have the stakes circled in red on the photo on the right, just to be able to pick them out a little bit more. You can see it's a pretty gradual slope looking down towards the northwest. This is looking the opposite way towards the southeast. Again, the corner stakes are circled in red. The tree line is where the driveway comes up. That construction had occurred already. It had begun. They did receive the access permit from the county highway a couple of years ago when they went through the conditional use permit. So you will see some disturbance in the pictures already, but that has been reviewed by highway. And then this is looking towards the southwest. Again, the new dwelling location circled and staked with circles around the stakes. And then this is looking towards the driveway. So you can see some of the piles. There was also septic work done to look at soils. And I believe they used a mini excavator. So some of those piles are from the soils work too. This is the road access. So it's Apple Blossom Drive. You go kind of up the embankment up to get to their parcel. But the proposal is that it would be less than a 12% grade, which is our driveway standard for new accesses for residences. As I mentioned, Highway Department did approve the access permit, so that has been constructed. They did attend a township meeting on April 11th. The township indicated no comments in regards to the request. So then our recommendation would be that you consider all materials and testimony like always before making findings that support your decision. Our analysis and draft findings do support granting the variance, and there are 2 conditions attached as well. The petitioners here, if you have any questions for them, otherwise I'm available as well. Yep.
So I assume it's not okay to build a house on a parcel line normally if you own 2 parcels?
Correct.
Maybe not have a septic on the other side of the line or something like that?
Right, so they haven't submitted the parcel combination form yet, but that goes to our auditor treasurer, and there's a couple of things that they need to check off in order to like officially approve it. I did talk to auditor treasurer, and they indicated that there wouldn't be an issue with combining those parcels.
Okay.
So that would become one parcel.
Correct.
Okay, and it, from the previous owners, it has a covenant on it that then only one single-family dwelling would be able to be built on the combination of those 2 parcels. So there wouldn't be another dwelling allowed under that covenant.
Correct, that's my understanding, yep.
Okay, thank you.
And Olivia, just for my clarification, originally, before the second parcel became involved, a variance from the soil issue was not necessary because they met the ordinance provision on the percentage of land that was in prime soil.
Correct.
And because of the second parcel perhaps having more prime soil, that's what created the need for the variance.
Correct. So in 2017, they met the exemption because that original parcel was under 40%. Now the combination pushes them over that 40% threshold.
Brett, did you say 49%?
Yep. Both locations were on prime soils, like I mentioned. It's just whether or not they met the exemption.
Do you know anything about the history of both parcels regarding agricultural production in the past?
Sure. So the petitioners did mention that in their packet of information they provided. My understanding is that it has not been used for agricultural production in the past. It's part of the Skemp family, so these have been parcels of record since a long time.
Yeah, in fact, just to elaborate on that, I believe most of those 5-acre lots that were created along County Road 1, I believe was created by Skemp, and they had done that prior to the 1988-89 ordinance. They had done that kind of preemptively before that one non-farm dwelling per quarter section went into play. And they made them large enough to be exempt from subdivision regulations. So most of those houses are a result of surveying and processes that were done in the mid-80s.
So all those houses we see upon Apple Blossom are most likely on prime soil, but were exempt from the statutory provision?
Most of that, the prime soils would be a different element because most of those had not been evaluated prior to that, so.
Any other questions for Olivia?
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm assuming you're the petitioner since you're the last one left. You can come up to the mic and just say your name and address for the record.
I'm Marcy Skemp. I live at 734 North 4th Street in La Crescent. Just to reiterate what Olivia had said, that the land has never been used for agricultural purposes. And our new proposed site plan would reduce any more soil disruption or more soil disruption compared to our site plan in 2017. So our driveway would not be as long and would not encumber bluff land as significantly as our new site plan would.
Any other questions for the petitioner? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I would entertain a motion to open the public hearing.
So moved.
I'll second.
With a motion by Ed and a second by Lynn to open the public hearing. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, the meeting is open to the public. Would anyone like to speak for or against this petition? For the second time, would anyone like to speak for or against this petition? For the third time, would anyone like to speak for or against this petition? Not seeing anyone unmute themselves online, so I would entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
I make the motion.
I'll second.
Motion by Ed, seconded by Lynn to close the public hearing. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? None opposed. The public hearing is closed. Any discussion?
I think it seems reasonable. It was already approved, and now it seems to be a better.
Are able to.
I move approval of the application, subject to the conditions and the findings of fact contained in the staff report.
Do we have a second? Okay. We have a motion by Ed and a second by Kelsey to approve the variance with the findings of fact and conditions as written in the staff report. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. None opposed. The variance is granted. And since I forgot on the first two petitions, I need to read the appeal to the district court. All decisions made by the Board of Adjustment in granting variances or in hearing appeals from any administrative order, requirement, decision, or determination shall be final except that any aggrieved person or persons or any department, board, or commission of the jurisdiction or of the state shall have the right to appeal within 30 days after the receipt of the notice of the decision to the district court in the county in which the land is located on questions of law and fact. Any party that would like to submit an appeal to the decision just rendered at this public hearing must do so to the district court. The planning department is not responsible for filing the appeal. And I believe that is all we have.
Make a motion to adjourn. At second.
Eric?
Just want to jump into, probably forgot to omit. I'd like to turn it over to Ross Dunsmore for. Welcome.
Hello, I'm just Ross Dunsmore. I've been with the Environmental Services section of the department for 38 years. Last week, I did assume the interim position for the foreseeable future. So you'll start to see me a little bit more here. So,
All right, nice.
Thanks.
Thanks, Ross. All right, we have a motion. Did I get a second on that?
I think
Yes.
so.
Was that you? Okay, I thought so. We have a motion by Kelsey, seconded by Amy to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None opposed. We're adjourned.